What would you do if your own sister mocked your career in front of the whole family only to come crawling back when her world came crashing down? This isn't just sibling drama, it's a wake-up call about respect, boundaries, and karma. If you've ever lived through something like this, or even watched it unfold, drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know, are you still watching from the beginning? Let me know below while we dive deeper. I've learned something over the years. Family can wound you in ways strangers never could. That truth came slamming into me one Tuesday night in Chicago, when my phone buzzed with a message from the Miller family group chat. Normally, I ignore that little ding. It's always my mom, Linda, forwarding good morning gifs, my dad, Thomas, dropping the same recycled hustle quotes he's been posting since 2008, and my sister Alicia showing off her courtroom wins like she's running her own press conference. But that night, I opened it, and I wish I hadn't. There it was, a meme. A cartoon sketch of a scruffy guy in a hoodie, surrounded by empty soda cans and Cheeto bags, fingers stained orange, hunched over a dusty laptop. The caption read, "Freelance coding = unemployed gamer." And right there, in bold, was my name tagged not once, but twice. The one who posted it? Alicia. My little sister. The lawyer. The golden child of the family. Within seconds, the chat lit up. My mom dropped a laughing emoji. My dad chimed in with, "So true, haha." My cousin tossed in a Kevin Hart gif, like it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. Not a single person defended me, not one. I stared at the screen for a long moment. That knot in my stomach tightening. I wasn't angry. Anger implies you still expect better. No. I felt something heavier. A kind of weary clarity. Without typing a single word, I tapped leave conversation. No dramatic exit message. No, you'll regret this. Just gone. Because here's the thing. I've been playing this role my whole life, the invisible sibling, the family tech support, the guy who fixes your Wi-Fi for free but gets no applause when you pass the bar exam. When Alicia graduated law school, my parents threw her a week-long celebration with catered dinners, a photo shoot, even a custom cake shaped like a gavel. When I landed my first major freelance client, my dad brushed it off as a phase, and my mom asked, "Are you still doing that computer thing?" It was never about who I really was. It was about who they wanted to brag about at church, or over dinner with friends. And the lawyer daughter fit the script better than the coder son. But here's what they don't see. I'm not some kid in a basement living off Red Bull and Xbox points. I've built a career brick by brick, project by project, invoice by invoice. I've helped small businesses keep their doors open, entrepreneurs scale their startups, and yes, I've fixed my sister's messes too. The portal she bragged about figuring out last year, that was me on a frantic Zoom call, patching broken JavaScript while she pretended to be the hero. So no, I didn't leave the group chat because I was hurt. I left because I finally understood this wasn't a misunderstanding. This is how they see me. A joke. And if that's the way they want to write me into the family story, then fine, I'll write my own. That night, I went back to my desk. Half a carton of leftover lo mein sat beside me. My screen lit up with 3 new client tickets waiting to be solved. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, free. But just before midnight, I looked at that screenshot again, the meme my own sister made at my expense. Something about it gnawed at me. Not because it hurt, but because I had a gut feeling. Life has a strange way of circling back. 5 days of silence, and then Alicia's name flashed across my screen like a fire alarm. It's urgent. No hello, no apology, no I went too far. Just urgency, as if I were an on-call help desk she forgot to pay for. I let the message sit there a full minute, watching the 3 little dots appear and vanish like a heartbeat. Another text landed. "Someone hacked my files, I need you." I could almost hear her voice clipped, impatient, still wearing that tone that says she's the professional and I'm the hobbyist. I put the phone down and stirred the chicken noodle soup cooling on my counter. Outside, February wind whipped through the alley behind my building, rattling the metal lids of the dumpsters like cymbals. Chicago in winter has a way of telling you the truth. It's cold, it's hard, and no one owes you warmth. I typed, "What happened?" Her reply came rapid fire. "Cloud folder acting weird. Files moved. Some screenshots she didn't recognize. A few shared links she swore she never created. It's sensitive, she wrote. Could be career ending. Career ending. That word sat on my tongue like a lead marble. Okay, I wrote back. I can help. My standard rate applies. I'll send an estimate and a scope. A pause. Then, you're seriously charging me? I'm your sister. I took a breath. The spoon clinked the side of the bowl. I charge because this is my profession. She didn't like that answer. Come on, Ethan. It's not like you're busy with a real job. Just take a look and tell me what to do. There it was, the old song with a fresh verse. The meme, remixed into a plea. If you want professional help, you'll pay my professional rate. Otherwise, I can't take the project. 3 minutes. Nothing. Then my phone rang. Mom. On caller ID. I let it buzz twice before picking up. Sweetheart, my mother began, voice syrupy with concern. Your sister's in trouble. Don't be stubborn. Just help her this once. This once? I said quietly. You mean like the portal I fixed last spring? Or the printer emergency at Thanksgiving? A sigh, theatrical. Don't keep score. Family doesn't keep score. That's funny, I said, because I've been the scoreboard for years. She lowered her voice. Alicia's work is on the line. You know how hard she's worked. So have I said, and ended the call before the guilt could take root. Alicia texted again. Fine. Send your rate. But hurry. I drafted a short scope. Account audit, access logs, link history, permission map, and a password hygiene reset. Estimated hours. Rate per hour. A line for rush work. I kept it clean, respectful, like I do for every client who treats me like a professional instead of a handyman with a laptop. Her reply landed with the grace of a brick through glass. This is ridiculous. You're gouging me. I stared at the number I'd sent. Fair market, even friendly. You asked for urgent help. Urgent costs more. No response. 10 minutes. 15. I put the soup in the fridge and opened my laptop. Another client ticket waited. Payment gateway failing on mobile. Real work. Real people. Real problems. I felt the calm that comes when you do what you're built to do. At 11:42 p.m., Alicia sent a final text. Forget it. I'll find someone else. Good. I whispered to the empty apartment. Not bitter. Not triumphant. Just clean. Like stepping out of a room that smelled like old smoke and finally breathing in cold air. The next morning, I woke to a different kind of silence. No pings, no guilt calls. The city felt brighter, even with the wind cutting down the block like a knife. I made coffee, answered emails, scheduled 2 video calls, and for the first time in a long while, my shoulders dropped from around my ears. By afternoon, a message from a high school friend popped up. Random question, Alicia, okay? Seeing weird stuff on a legal forum? My stomach tightened. What kind of weird? Screenshots, I think. Personal. Looked bad. I set my mug down too hard. Coffee sloshed over my knuckles, hot and stinging. I wiped the counter, then stood perfectly still, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the old radiator ticking, the world narrowing to the glow of my phone. I hadn't touched her files. I had the texts, the timestamps, the estimate I'd sent. But gut truth doesn't care about paperwork, not when panic is contagious. I typed a message to Alicia, then erased it. I typed another, erased that too. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to step back into a role I'd finally walked away from. I closed my eyes and drew a breath that felt like it measured a full yard from chest to floor. Boundaries are only real when they cost you something. Mine were about to cost me the illusion that I could fix everything and keep the peace. That evening, as the sun slid behind the brick rooftops and the streetlights clicked on in a staggered line, my phone buzzed again. A new notification, not from family, from a legal gossip thread based in Illinois. Trending: Chicago attorney's private communications leak, professional fallout incoming. I didn't open it right away. My hand hovered, heart beating a steady, patient drum. Somewhere, a train rumbled past, the steel wheels singing over the tracks. I finally tapped. The first screenshot loaded slowly on my phone, as if it knew the weight it carried. A conversation box. Alicia's name at the top. The text beneath wasn't about contracts or case law, it was a string of messages to a man whose profile photo was not her husband. Greg. My brother-in-law. The man who had smiled politely at family dinners, asked me about the Cubs, and once helped me move a futon up 3 flights of stairs. The messages were explicit. Too explicit. A mix of pet names and half-baked innuendo typed at odd hours, complete with photos that left no room for interpretation. Worse yet, each message bore the firm's email watermark in the corner. She hadn't even bothered with a burner account. By the time I scrolled to the end, my jaw was locked tight. This wasn't just a personal mess. This was malpractice territory. Ethical violations that could bury her career. Within hours, the thread exploded across Chicago's legal circles. LinkedIn connections whispered. Group chats among attorneys lit up like fireworks. One post read, "Unbelievable recklessness using firm accounts for this?" Another said, "If the bar sees this, she's finished." I didn't comment. I didn't even react. I just sat in my small apartment, coffee cooling at my side, watching the digital avalanche swallow my sister whole. By mid-afternoon, the fallout reached her home. Greg went dark on social media, wiped their wedding photos, and updated his profile to a single word: forward. It was the coldest move I'd ever seen, and somehow, it was poetic. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling as my phone buzzed again and again. Old classmates. Acquaintances. Even a former neighbor. "Hey, isn't this your sister?" Rough stuff, man. My throat tightened. Not with anger, but with something stranger: recognition. I had warned her. Not directly about this, but about the little things. Weak passwords. Sloppy file management. Overconfidence. She'd rolled her eyes, said, "Not everyone has to live like a paranoid coder, Ethan." And now, here it was. A lifetime of arrogance unraveling in real time. That evening my phone finally rang. "Alicia." I let it buzz 5 times before picking up. "What did you do?" Her voice cracked between fury and fear. "Nothing," I said flatly. "Don't lie to me. Those files, those screenshots, they didn't leak themselves. You had access." "No," I cut in. "I didn't. You came to me. I offered professional help. You refused. That's the truth." Silence on the line. For a moment, all I could hear was her breathing, ragged and fast. Then a whisper. "You wanted this. You always wanted to see me fall." I closed my eyes. "No, Alicia. I wanted respect. That's all." She hung up. The next morning, my inbox was flooded with client messages, some routine, some urgent. One even came from a referral who'd seen my name mentioned positively on a small business forum. Meanwhile, Alicia's name was trending on a local gossip blog under the headline, "Chicago attorney faces ethics scandal after leaked affair." I didn't share it, didn't screenshot it. I didn't need to. The internet was already writing her obituary in the court of public opinion. Greg, meanwhile, wasn't answering her calls. Word around town was he'd changed the locks, taken the car, and moved out. Someone told me he'd even given away her Peloton for free on Craigslist. The Miller family group chat? Silent. No memes, no motivational quotes, just a black hole of shame where laughter used to be. I sat in my chair that night, staring out the window at the blinking red lights atop the Sears Tower, and felt something I hadn't in years: relief. For once, I wasn't the family's cleanup crew. I wasn't the scapegoat. But that relief didn't last long. The envelope sat heavy in my hands, the ink still smelling faintly of toner. I didn't need to read past the bold header to know what it was: notice of intent to sue. Alicia wasn't just spiraling, she was trying to pull me down with her. The claim: defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and, my personal favorite, malicious sabotage of her professional reputation. Damages sought: $120,000. It would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. I called Bramwell that night. Marcus Bramwell, my attorney of 5 years. built like a linebacker and calm as a yoga instructor. He skimmed the PDF, chuckled low, and sent me a voice note. "Bro, we're going to eat this alive." 2 weeks later, I sat in the courtroom of Cook County, the wooden benches polished smooth by decades of restless bodies. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My palms were steady, though the steadiness of a man who knows the truth is on his side. Across the aisle, Alicia looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles bruised her eyes, hair pulled too tight, blazer hanging loose. Beside her sat a junior attorney. I didn't recognize, likely the only one naive enough to touch this mess. The proceedings began. Alicia's lawyer launched into his speech, voice full of drama but light on facts. He painted me as a jealous older brother, obsessed with ruining his sister's success. He claimed I had unique access to her accounts, that I had twisted private conversations into evidence of misconduct. I nearly laughed out loud. It was like watching a bad television pilot, lots of theatrics, no substance. Then Bramwell stood, calm, direct, unshakable. "No manipulation occurred," he said simply. "What happened is this. The plaintiff stored explicit and incriminating material on a shared cloud folder with no encryption and weak access control. She then attempted to shift responsibility onto my client when those files leaked. We have receipts." And he did. He laid them out like cards on the table. Screenshots of Alicia begging me for help, her refusal to pay, my professional estimate, and the metadata logs that proved I never touched her files. The clincher? The access history. 3 accounts had opened her Google Drive. Mine wasn't one of them. But the Gmail address of her affair partner? Clear as day. When Bramwell read it aloud, Alicia's face drained of color. Her lawyer stammered, tried to pivot. "The timing is circumstantial, Your Honor." But the judge wasn't buying it. Finally, Alicia herself took the stand. Her voice shook as she delivered a rambling monologue about betrayal and family and how I'd always been jealous. It was painful to watch, like seeing someone attempt karaoke on a song they didn't know the words to. The judge leaned forward, elbows on the bench. His voice cut through the courtroom like a gavel. "You didn't file a case, you filed a vendetta. This court will not be weaponized for your personal grudges." Case dismissed. With prejudice. With prejudice, meaning she couldn't try again. It was over. I felt Bramwell's hand clap my shoulder, solid and grounding. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk. I just stood, nodded to the judge, and walked out of that courthouse like a man with better things to do. Outside, the March air bit cold against my face, but it felt fresher than any breath I'd taken in months. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wasn't going to let their chaos invade this moment of clarity. A week after the court victory, I heard the knock. Steady, polite, almost rehearsed. Not the frantic pounding of a neighbor or the casual tap of a delivery guy. This knock carried weight. I already knew before I opened the door. Thomas and Linda stood there, my parents bundled against the Chicago wind, faces stiff with an uncomfortable mix of shame and entitlement. Mom clutched her purse like a lifeline. Dad's hands were buried deep in his coat pockets, his posture all business, the way he used to stand when he wanted me to listen seriously. "Can we come in?" Mom asked. I stepped aside, motioned toward the couch. They sat like guests in a stranger's living room, eyes darting around my modest apartment. For years they'd called it temporary, as if freelancing was a layover before I finally grew up. Now, in the silence, the walls seemed to whisper a truth they'd never accepted. I had built a life without them. Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister's going through a rough patch," he began. "Yeah," I said, "so I've noticed." Mom leaned forward, voice soft and pleading. "She's being investigated. It could get serious. We need you to help her through this." There it was. Not congratulations on surviving a lawsuit. Not an apology for laughing at me in the group chat. Just another request for unpaid labor this time, with legal consequences attached. Dad reached into his coat and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it across my coffee table like a contract deal. Inside was a document already bearing Alicia's signature, a statement suggesting the leaked files were forgeries, possibly created by a family member with access to her accounts. They wanted me to sign. I let out a laugh, sharp and humorless. "You're asking me to confess to something I didn't do? To take the fall so she keeps her license?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. It's just to calm things down. No one's going to check the details. Mom folded her arms, her tone turning sharp. You don't even have a reputation to protect, Ethan. She does. Be reasonable. The words hit like ice water. You don't even have a reputation. 31 years of work, of invoices, of satisfied clients, all erased in one sentence. I stood, towering over them. You're actually saying I have nothing to lose, that I should burn my future to keep her warm? They flinched at my tone. Mom's eyes filled with frustrated tears. Dad muttered, You're being emotional. No, I snapped. I'm being done. I shoved the folder back across the table, hard enough for it to slide onto the rug. Take your paperwork, take your guilt, and take your golden child's mess with you. I'm not signing, not lying, not covering, not anymore. The silence was brutal. Mom grabbed her purse, lips pressed thin. Dad stood slowly, disappointment radiating from his posture. As they shuffled toward the door, Mom tossed one last line over her shoulder. I hope you're happy when she loses everything. I leaned against the frame as they stepped out into the hallway. She lost it the second she mocked me and expected me to play janitor. The door clicked shut behind them. For a long moment I just stood there, chest heaving, adrenaline buzzing in my fingertips. I hadn't just said no to a favor. I'd said no to a lifetime of being the family scapegoat. Later that night, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat by the window. The city lights flickered against the snow outside, and for the first time, I felt the ground solid beneath me. Saying no had cost me something, yes, but it had also bought me freedom. It was a gray Tuesday morning when the news broke. My phone buzzed non-stop texts, notifications, emails, all carrying the same headline. Illinois Bar Association suspends attorney Alicia Miller pending ethics review. There it was in black and white, published across every local outlet that mattered. A single sentence that cut through months of denial, guilt trips, and family manipulation. Alicia wasn't untouchable anymore. The golden child had lost her shine. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee steaming in my mug, and let the silence sink in. Outside, the snow was beginning to melt along the Chicago sidewalks, slushing into puddles at the corners. A thaw. Something about it felt symbolic ice giving way to the truth beneath. The fallout hit fast. By noon, Alicia's name vanished from her firm's website. Her bio, her headshot, her carefully curated list of accomplishments all deleted like she'd never existed. Clients scrambled to distance themselves. One even left a blistering review online. Unreliable. Would not recommend. I didn't laugh. I didn't cheer. Watching someone's life collapse isn't entertaining when it's your own blood. But it wasn't surprising either. This was the bill she'd been running up for years, every lie, every manipulation, every arrogant dismissal of consequences. And karma? Karma never forgets the tab. The rumors spread beyond the legal world. Word reached my inbox from a friend who worked in real estate law. She's radioactive now. No one's touching her. I pictured Alicia scrolling through her phone, watching doors slam shut in real time, and for the first time, I realized she wasn't just losing her license, she was losing her identity. Meanwhile, Greg, her husband, went full scorched earth. He deleted every trace of their marriage online. Wedding photos? Gone. Vacation shots? Vanished. Even his bio changed one single word, forward. Then came the post that made my jaw drop. A photo of their golden retriever, Max, sitting proudly in the living room. The caption read, "She got the degree. I got the loyalty." Savage, brutal. But somehow, poetic. I found myself staring at that post longer than I should have, torn between pity for my sister and respect for the kind of clean break I'd always dreamed of making from this family circus. By Friday, whispers grew louder. Friends of friends claimed Greg had changed the locks on their condo. Someone else said he sold her Peloton on Craigslist for $50. Another swore she'd seen Alicia hauling boxes into a one-bedroom rental on the north side, face hidden under a baseball cap. The once celebrated attorney, reduced to moving like a fugitive in her own city. That weekend, my parents called again. I let it ring. Then again. And again. Finally, I answered on the fourth try, more out of curiosity than obligation. Ethan. My mother's voice wavered. Your sister is… She's devastated. She needs her family right now. Funny, I said. So did I, the night you all laughed at me in that group chat. That was just a joke, she protested weakly. No, I corrected her. That was the truth you were too comfortable to say out loud. There was no reply, just a long, heavy silence before she whispered, she could lose everything. I see that I do then to be casters curious. She already has, I said and hung up. That night I poured myself another bourbon and sat by the window again. The city hummed below, the L train rattling in the distance, headlights streaking through the slush. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the family disappointment. I felt like the survivor. Spring came early to Chicago that year. The snow finally melted off the sidewalks, and the city seemed to exhale after months of holding its breath. For me, business was booming. Referrals poured in. A property management company needed a scheduling system rebuilt. A boutique store wanted a custom checkout app. Word was spreading. I wasn't just some unemployed gamer. I was the guy you called when you wanted things done right. And then just as the air started to feel lighter, there it was again. That knock. I knew it before I even opened the door. My parents. Thomas and Linda Miller stood in the hallway, hands clasped, smiles stretched too tight to be genuine. They looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of their golden child's fall had shrunken them. Mom's sunglasses didn't hide the puffiness around her eyes. Dad's posture carried that uneasy stiffness I remembered from when he forgot to pay the water bill years ago. Ethan, Mom began, voice trembling with forced warmth. Can we come in? I stepped aside, shoes off. I'm no tea they were president my sign. They sat on the couch like two people waiting for bad news in a hospital. The silence was thick. Finally, Dad spoke. We wanted to talk about your sister. Of course, always about Alicia. She's trying, Mom added quickly. She's had a hard time. And now she's struggling financially. I raised an eyebrow. You mean she can't pay rent? They exchanged a look. Yes, Dad admitted. We were hoping you could help, just a little. Alone, until she gets back on her feet. Also, the words landed like an insult. Alone. After years of being dismissed, mocked, told my career was temporary, they were finally acknowledging I had money only because they wanted some of it. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Let me get this straight. When she mocked me in the family chat, you laughed. When she dragged me into court, you backed her. When you needed a scapegoat, you handed me the paperwork. And now, because I survived all of it, I owe her a loan? Mom's eyes glistened. She's still your sister. And you're still my parents, I shot back. Funny how that never seemed to matter when I was the punchline. Dad bristled. Don't twist this into old grudges. She's family. We take care of family. I stood and walked to the small table by my entryway. From the drawer, I pulled a thin envelope. Inside were copies of Alicia's lawsuit, the judge's dismissal, and my most recent business registration for tax season. I handed it to them. What's this? Dad asked. Proof, I said. Proof of where I've been. Of what I've built. Because you sure as hell never noticed. They flipped through the papers in silence. Mom set them down without a word. I'm not giving her a dime, I continued. And I'm not giving you one either. You made your choice. You invested everything, your money, your pride, your loyalty in her. You bet on the wrong horse. Don't act surprised now that she can't carry you. Mom's lip quivered. That's cruel. No, I said softly. That's math. The room went dead quiet. They stared at me, maybe hoping pity would melt my resolve. But I'd spent 31 years being the safety net. I wasn't about to turn into the lifeboat. Eventually, Dad stood, shoulders slumped. We just thought… Yeah, I interrupted. That's the problem. You thought I'd always be the backup plan, but I'm not. They left without another word, the door clicking shut with the finality of a gavel. I exhaled slowly, the tension draining from my chest. For the first time, I wasn't the afterthought or the family handyman. I was the one who held the line. The morning the news went public, I was already awake before the Sunday. My laptop hummed softly on the desk, coffee steaming in my favorite mug, when the headline dropped across every Chicago outlet. Illinois Bar Association permanently revokes Alicia Miller's license for ethics violations. No appeals, no second chances. It was over. I sat there for a long moment, just letting it sink in. Not with joy, not with vengeance. Just with a quiet certainty that the wheel had finally completed its turn. For years, Alicia strutted like a queen in her robe and heels, quoting statutes at Thanksgiving dinners, collecting applause like candy. Now, her kingdom had vanished overnight. Word spread fast. Her LinkedIn went dark within hours. Old law school friends unfriended her. Recruiters whispered her name as a cautionary tale. By noon, she wasn't a rising star anymore, she was a warning. Meanwhile, my own phone kept buzzing. A small business in Lincoln Park wanted help with their e-commerce system. A construction company needed a scheduling app. Even a local nonprofit reached out, saying they'd heard I was reliable. Reliable. That word meant more to me than any family compliment I'd never received. But Alicia? She was spiraling. I heard from a friend who saw her moving into a cramped studio near Uptown, face hidden under a baseball cap. No car, no ring, no clients. The woman who once lorded her achievements over me now had to grocery shop like a ghost, hoping no one recognized her. Greg, her husband, had vanished completely. Changed numbers, changed locks. The dog stayed with him. The last trace of their marriage was a Craigslist ad. Used furniture, cheap, must pick up. My parents, of course, were wrecked. They stopped calling me for a while, ashamed or maybe just tired. They poured everything into her for 3 decades, and now they had nothing to show for it. I should have felt bitter satisfaction. Instead, all I felt was distance, like I was finally standing on the other side of a canyon I'd spent my whole life trying to cross. One evening, as spring slipped into summer, I sat in my apartment staring at the Chicago skyline. The Sears Tower glowed against the dusk. My desk was cluttered with projects, invoices, sticky notes. Real work, real growth. And then my phone buzzed. A message. From Alicia. Just one line. "You always wanted this. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen, fingers hovering above the keyboard. I could have replied. I could have unleashed 30 years of swallowed words. But instead, I put the phone down. Some things don't need an answer. Because the truth, I hadn't wanted her to fall. I just wanted to stand tall without her shadow cutting me down. That night, I drafted a post for my business page. In this industry, respect matters more than titles. Build slow, build steady, build honest. Everything else crumbles. The comments poured in: clients, colleagues, even strangers, people who knew what it felt like to be underestimated. People who knew that sometimes the sweetest victory isn't revenge, it's recognition. Weeks later, at a networking event, someone introduced me to a potential client with a simple line. "This is Ethan Miller. He's the guy who gets things done. Not the lawyer's brother. Not the gamer, just Ethan." And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't about my sister's fall. It was about my rise.